She thought the lake belonged to her. She never imagined the man she was yelling at owned everything around it. On a quiet afternoon, the lake shimmered under soft sunlight, calm and inviting. Families passed by, birds skimmed the water, and the neighborhood felt peaceful. That peace ended the moment a woman stormed down the dock, voice sharp and accusing. She wore confidence like armor, pointing at a man standing near the water with quiet patience. To her, he was just another resident breaking HOA rules. To him, it was another reminder of how easily people assumed power they never had. She told him the lake was HOA property, that access was restricted, and that she was calling the cops. Her words echoed across the water, drawing attention from nearby homes. The man didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. He simply listened. Inside, he knew something she didn't. This confrontation wasn't about rules or access. It was about ownership, control, and pride. As she dialed her phone, she smirked, confident that the law would be on her side. Neighbors watched from a distance, sensing drama unfolding. The man looked across the lake, calm eyes reflecting the water's surface. He knew this moment would change everything. The call connected, and the promise of authority hung in the air. What no one there realized was that this single phone call was about to expose a truth that would shake the entire block. And when the police arrived, the story everyone believed would completely collapse. Police cars rolled in slowly, tires crunching against gravel, lights off but presence heavy. The woman crossed her arms, standing tall like she had already won. She explained loudly how the man was trespassing, how the HOA controlled the lake, and how rules existed for a reason. She spoke with certainty, using words like "my neighborhood" and "our authority." The officers listened, nodding politely as they turned toward the man. He remained still, hands relaxed, posture steady. When asked for his side, he spoke calmly, explaining he had full rights to be there. That answer made her laugh. A sharp, dismissive sound. She mocked his confidence, telling officers they should remove him immediately. Neighbors leaned closer, phones lifted, whispers spreading. The lake, once peaceful, felt tense and exposed. One officer asked a simple question about property lines. The woman waved it off, insisting the HOA documents proved everything. The man said nothing more. He reached into his jacket slowly, not with fear, but intention. The air felt thick as eyes followed his movement. The officers watched closely, alert but curious. What he pulled out wasn't anger or resistance. It was proof. Not just paperwork, but a truth that had been ignored for years. The woman's smile faded as the officer took the documents and began reading. Her confidence cracked, just slightly. The neighbors felt it too. Something was shifting. This wasn't the simple rule violation she expected. It was becoming something far bigger, something irreversible. And as the officer looked up, the silence spoke louder than any accusation. The officer's expression changed as he read, eyes moving slower with each line. He asked another officer to look. The woman interrupted, insisting there must be a mistake. She demanded they enforce HOA authority, repeating that the lake belonged to the community. The man stayed quiet, allowing the truth to surface on its own. The officers stepped aside, comparing maps, documents, and records pulled from their system. Minutes passed like hours. The woman's voice grew strained, less certain, more defensive. She accused the man of manipulation, of trying to confuse law enforcement. But facts don't bend to volume. One officer returned, asking her if she understood what the documents meant. She scoffed, claiming she knew the neighborhood better than anyone. That's when the words landed. The lake wasn't HOA property. It was privately owned. Not just the water, but the surrounding land. The dock. The paths. Even the street they stood on. Her face drained of color. Neighbors gasped softly, realization spreading like ripples. The man finally spoke, explaining he had purchased the land years ago, long before the HOA expanded. He allowed access out of goodwill, not obligation. The silence that followed was heavy. The woman looked around, searching for support, but found only stunned faces. The authority she leaned on was gone. The officers confirmed the records again. Everything checked out. The power dynamic had completely flipped. What began as an accusation was now a revelation. But the final truth hadn't even been spoken yet. Because owning the lake was only part of the story. And what came next would leave her standing on ground she never truly controlled. The officer cleared his throat and continued explaining. According to county records, the man didn't just own the lake. He owned the land beneath every home on the block. The street. The sidewalks. The easements the HOA depended on. The neighborhood existed because of an agreement he had never enforced. The woman's knees weakened as the meaning settled in. Everything she claimed authority over rested on land she didn't own. The HOA contracts referenced permissions, not ownership. The man had chosen peace over power for years. Until now. Neighbors murmured, shock turning into disbelief. Some remembered signing papers without reading the fine print. Others recalled odd clauses they never questioned. The woman tried to speak, but no sound came. Her confidence shattered completely. The officers explained that her call was unfounded and that the man had every legal right to be there. More than that, he had rights she never imagined. The man looked around, meeting the eyes of the neighbors, not with anger, but disappointment. He spoke calmly, saying he never wanted conflict. He allowed access because community mattered. But respect mattered more. The woman backed away, suddenly small, her authority exposed as borrowed and fragile. The officers suggested everyone step back and cool down. The lake returned to silence, but the neighborhood would never be the same. The truth had surfaced. And it couldn't be buried again. What happened next wouldn't involve shouting or threats. It would involve choices. And those choices would decide the future of every home on that block. In the days that followed, fear replaced arrogance. HOA meetings turned tense as residents demanded answers. The woman avoided eye contact, her leadership questioned openly for the first time. The man didn't revoke access. He didn't threaten eviction. He simply asked for respect, transparency, and honesty. The documents were reviewed by lawyers, confirming everything. The neighborhood existed on land leased through trust, not owned. The power the HOA believed it had was an illusion. Residents began apologizing, realizing how close they came to losing everything. The woman resigned quietly, her authority dissolved by truth, not force. The man attended one final meeting, not to punish, but to reset boundaries. He explained ownership didn't mean control, and generosity didn't mean weakness. The room was silent as people understood the lesson. The lake remained open. The streets stayed accessible. But the attitude changed. Neighbors greeted him differently now, with humility instead of entitlement. The confrontation had exposed something deeper than property lines. It revealed how quickly power can corrupt when unchallenged. The man walked away knowing he didn't need to dominate to be respected. The neighborhood learned that assumptions can be dangerous, especially when built on borrowed ground. But one question still lingered in every mind. What if he had chosen differently? What if he hadn't been patient? That question alone was enough to keep the peace moving forward. Months later, the lake looked the same, but the energy felt different. Rules were rewritten, not to control, but to cooperate. Residents volunteered, conversations replaced complaints, and trust slowly rebuilt. The man watched from a distance, content knowing balance had been restored. He never needed to remind them who owned the land. They remembered. The story spread beyond the block, becoming a quiet warning about entitlement and respect. The woman moved away, her name fading from conversations. The officers occasionally passed through, nodding in recognition. What stayed behind was a lesson carved into memory. Ownership isn't just legal. It's ethical. Authority isn't loud. It's earned. The man never raised his voice, never embarrassed her publicly. He let truth do the work. And that truth reshaped an entire community. The lake reflected sunlight again, calm and unchanged, holding the story beneath its surface. People walked the paths more carefully now, aware of where they stood. Not because of fear, but understanding. The man believed this was the real victory. Not control, not revenge, but awareness. The moment power met humility, everything shifted. And while the confrontation ended months ago, its impact remained. Because sometimes the strongest message isn't shouted, it's revealed. In the end, the neighborhood didn't lose access to the lake. It gained perspective. The man never asked for apologies, only respect. The truth had done enough. What started as an angry phone call became a lesson in ownership, humility, and restraint. The woman thought authority came from titles. She learned it comes from truth. The police didn't choose sides. They followed facts. And facts changed everything. Neighbors who once watched silently now spoke thoughtfully. The block found peace not through rules, but awareness. The man continued his life quietly, never seeking recognition. He didn't need it. The land was his, but the lesson belonged to everyone. Stories like this don't spread because of drama alone. They spread because they reveal something real about human nature. Assumptions, ego, power, and the calm strength of knowing when to speak and when to wait. The lake remained open, shimmering under the sun, unchanged yet meaningful. And every time someone walked its edge, they remembered what happened when someone claimed what wasn't theirs, and that was the final twist in this unbelievable HOA story. If you love the drama, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment sharing your thoughts. It really helps this channel grow.